The last Alberta provincial election saw a number of surprises, including certain cabinet ministers who were not re-elected, including Tyler Shandro, Josephine Pon, and Jason Copping. Daniel Smith and her party ended up getting a majority government, but it wasn't by a landslide like we saw back in 2019. Cheryl Seaborn ran for the UCP in Lethbridge West, and she lost to the incumbent, the NDP Shanna Phillips, by around 2,500 votes. Cheryl is a married mom, 5 kids, 6 grandkids, as a nurse, business owner, and has called Lethbridge home for about 25 years. As Cheryl joins us now from Lethbridge. Cheryl, welcome to Bridge City News.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to be here with you.
Cheryl, let's talk about the whole experience of running to become an MLA here in Lethbridge. Now, you came in only 7 weeks before the election when Tory Tanner stepped aside as the UCP candidate. That must have been challenging for you, so close to the election.
Yes, it definitely presents challenges. Of course, getting out there and getting to know people is probably the biggest challenge that I had. And so that's really the biggest challenge, is to be able to get out and get to know people as quickly as you want to.
Yeah, people get to know you at the same time, like who is Cheryl Seaborn, what is she all about, where does she stand on a number of issues, and how will she best represent me at the legislature? So Cheryl, looking back, what do you think you really learned during your campaign, you and your team?
Well, I learned that the people of Lethbridge are pretty awesome. That's one thing that really stood out to me as I door knocked, as I met with people, as I met with groups of people that requested visits with us, or as I was able to go to businesses and meet with business people and employees there. I learned about how invested people are in our community. I learned about how people are passionate about the things that are happening, the things that affect them and impact them, and the concerns that they had. And overall, just that we really do have a wonderful community of wonderful people, and who are really interested in having what's best for the community, for Alberta. And so that was a pleasure, actually. And in fact, I would say many people have asked me about my experience, even with the loss. And honestly, I can't say anything other than it was really an awesome experience. Even though the end result wasn't what I'd hoped for, it was an awesome experience.
But looking back, let's talk about maybe things you and your team would have done a little differently through this journey.
Yeah, for sure. So one of the things that I think I would want to do, even if I had a little bit longer time, is to bring more people together. I think that knocking on doors is great. You miss a lot of people when you knock on doors, though. I mean, we knocked on over 20,000 doors. Like, we actually, in a very short amount of time, I had a wonderful team of young people. We had a lot of great success in that way, and we're successful in many ways. But you don't get to meet everybody. And I think that bringing people together and hearing their views in town hall type of things, I think would have been very advantageous, actually. It gives you an opportunity to visit with people and get them to know you, which is really what's important, is for people to get to know me and to know what I stand for and how I would represent them, and really get a sense of that, like a feel of that. Sending out literature is great. Billboards are great. It shows people who you are by how you look, but it doesn't really tell people who you are and what you represent personally. And then also the opportunity then to have people ask you questions, right? Ask you questions and find out more information. And that's a two-way thing. You get to see where people stand on issues. You also get the opportunity to help people to get to know you better. And so I think actually that's something I would have done differently. I would have brought groups together and had more. I think that would have had more of an impact. That's very retrospective, right? Always 2020 vision. But when you have such a short period of time, that would have been very beneficial to do something like that.
What were some of the biggest issues you heard while door knocking? I guess maybe the doctor shortage came up right to the surface?
Yeah, for sure. Healthcare in general came to the surface. There was a lot of misinformation, as we're all aware of, that was coming out during that campaign period. And so trying to allay some fears that people had about healthcare, specific to Lethbridge, of course, physician shortages is a big thing. Without question, that was a big thing for people, for constituents. And then, of course, that follows in line. We went to the Canada Pension Plan. We went to cost of living, people were very concerned about, cost of rent. The seniors particularly very concerned about their cost of living, cost of rent, those types of issues as well.
So, Cheryl, as a registered nurse, what are your thoughts about the doctor shortage here in our region? There are still tens of thousands of people here in Lethbridge without a family physician.
Yeah, it is such a challenging and really complex issue. And I don't say that to make light of it or to try to brush it aside. It is a complex issue. Physicians are their own business. They make their own decisions about where they plan to live and to work. And that's based on lots of different things. What we do see is that physicians tend to, when they graduate medical school, they tend to go to areas where they have bigger centers. So, those bigger urban hospitals that offer many different types of services. And so they tend to kind of gravitate towards those areas. And so the trick really is for places like us, in Southern Alberta, is what are we going to do to make us that type of a center? I think the United Conservative Party is has been prior to the election and continues to make strides in that way, and trying to make Chinook Hospital an area where we are offering more services by having, the increase in our cardiac services that we're anticipating coming. We're looking at trying to work with the University of Calgary Medical School to have our own medical school down here in Lethbridge. We certainly have the population in the South Zone to be able to accommodate something like that. We need the political will, and we need the university to support something like that. And it would be a huge move for them to do so. And a huge, that's a long-term plan, right? To get doctors is a long-term plan, but we have to have a short-term, mid-term, and long-term plan in order to do something like that.
And it's not just the doctors, but let's talk about some of the specialists, the needs here as well, like obstetricians, cardiologists. We need so many more people coming to our region here to help us out.
Absolutely. So certainly having a cath lab will help cardiologists to come this way. And you have to start somewhere, right? You start with that, and then you build on that kind of a service. And then you look at other specialties that are associated with the cardiac area. And then you can build on that to trauma, and you can build in those ways. So you have to start one place at a time, and focus on one place at a time. Obstetricians, again, that's a complex situation. We have to do things to be able to encourage physicians to want to come to this area. We certainly have lots of babies born in this area, but besides babies, we have lots of needs. The women in this area have lots of other gynecological needs that need to be met. And currently, we have lots of physicians that are stepping up and doing the best that they can, but it really is not sufficient. There's no denying that, and we need to find ways to bring those obstetricians and attract them to areas like Lethbridge.
You're obviously still in contact with a lot of people within the party itself, within the UCP. Where do we stand right now? What are your thoughts regarding decentralizing EMS and improving ambulance response times? That was also a big election issue.
It was a big election issue. Improving EMS response times has actually been something that we've seen measurable. So the data supports that we are improving those times. Those were issues particularly in the urban centers. So like Lethbridge, for sure, Calgary, for sure, Edmonton, those were just huge issues there. And there's no question that we're seeing that has improved, and that's been a very measurable improvement. And that overall, it increases patient safety, right? That's a patient safety issue. And in healthcare, sometimes we get tied up a little bit in how much does that cost? Or what does that process look like? And we have to remember the humanness in healthcare. And that's something that really I very much advocate for, is at the end of the day, what is the best thing for the person that needs that care? Are we doing the best thing for that person? And I think that EMS piece has really focused on that, and that's been a great thing. Certainly, I work in rural AHS medicine, and we've seen very much an increase in support. Our EMS are wonderful in the rurals, and they work very well together as a team with the various rural sites. And so that's an area that has already been working very well and continues to improve over time.
Cheryl, what are your thoughts on the Marda Loop Health Clinic in Southwest Calgary that was going to be charging $2,000 per individual, like a membership fee to be able to get access to a doctor a lot faster, and maybe $4,000 per family? People were simply outraged by that, and they since pulled back since the province kind of pushed them on it and said, well, we're going to audit you guys here. But what are your thoughts on that? Health clinics doing stuff like that?
Yeah, you can't. I mean, it's not acceptable from the Canada Health Act. We aren't able to charge people to receive any type of care that you can get through our public health, right? Like any kind of service that we can that is accessible through public health, we can't charge for, so people can have really what would amount to an increased ability to get that help over someone else. And so it really was an inappropriate thing. I think that Premier Smith spoke very quickly to that and said it's unacceptable and it can't be done. And that was the appropriate thing to do. We can't see that happening at this time at all. Yeah, it's just an inappropriate method of trying to get people in to see physicians faster, or in a way that makes them seem able to access above and beyond the rest of us who maybe can't afford that kind of money to access healthcare.
So how important is it for people to actively engage in local politics to really influence healthcare policies and decisions?
It's important in order to be involved in everything, I would suggest, not just healthcare. People need to become far more involved, get to know who's representing them, like deeply get to know, is this person actually representing me? What are their values? Do they align with the things that I believe in? Do they align with what needs to happen in the province? And then reach out to them regularly. I hear people that say, I've reached out to my MLA, they're not responding. Don't stop.
So Cheryl, how can local politicians collaborate with healthcare experts to address a lot of the community-specific healthcare challenges?
Yeah, so I think that we're going to have to, some of that has been happening. It happened with Minister Copping when he was the health minister about a year ago. He started doing healthcare tours and actually reaching out to healthcare professionals and asking them, what we thought was the most important criteria, how we can engage more with what's going on locally and on the local level. And I think that that's a really great start. I think that that MLAs have a part to play in that, in reaching out to people, but really the health minister needs to be actively engaged throughout the province to see what are healthcare professionals saying that are actually seeing what's going on in the front line, and then addressing those concerns appropriately.
And what strategies can MLAs really employ to ensure healthcare accessibility for marginalized or underserved populations? Cheryl, what do you think?
Yeah, and so, that's a really critical issue, and it's a critical issue particularly for Lethbridge. We have many of those people, our homeless population, people with mental health and addictions that really do not receive likely adequate or any healthcare in some circumstances. And that, again, is a very complex question. It's not one that has a one answer. But MLAs need to be actively engaged, probably with not just provincially, but with what's going on in communities. So the municipality needs to be involved in that as well. So we need to be reaching out to our mayors to find out what's going on the ground in their view. Certainly in Lethbridge, we do have, mobile. We make efforts with mobile sites to be able to offer healthcare. We have Indigenous liaisons and Indigenous wellness core built within Alberta Health Services to help with that portion of the population who also seem to not get appropriate health care all the time for themselves. And we need to be able to connect that a little bit better. There's lots of complications in different areas, but a lot of it just comes through collaboration and discussion and trying to understand what's going on with leadership and what's going on the ground.
So Cheryl, what steps can constituents really take to hold their elected representatives accountable for their promises and actions related to healthcare?
Yeah, so constituents need to be in touch with their MLAs on a consistent basis. So, the United Conservative Party has made promises in regards to healthcare. Healthcare needs to remain public. They are sticking with that. They said that before the election. They continue to reinforce that after the election, that public healthcare remains public healthcare. And I think Marta Loop is a great example of that. That premier came out and said, no, it's still public healthcare. You can't be doing things like that. However, when it comes to other promises in healthcare related to ensuring that we're meeting the needs through family physicians, through getting more nurses, through getting more, occupational physiotherapists and all of those pieces. I think that first of all, constituents need to be educated about what exactly is healthcare. What exactly are we entitled to in our healthcare system, and make sure that they are talking to their MLAs on a very regular basis. The more MLAs hear from the grassroots of the province, the more they realize this is an issue and we need to be dealing with this issue. If the majority of people are silent, then it sends a message saying, oh, this isn't really an issue that the majority of Albertans are really that concerned about. So as Albertans, we need to be very vocal and go to our MLAs and tell them exactly what's on our minds so that they realize these are the things that are important to my constituents. And I need to take these back to the health minister and to the premier and let them know. And if they're hearing that throughout the province, that's a direction, that is a directive that we're giving to the province and to the premier, saying this is important to us and we need to address it.
So Cheryl, we only have about 30 seconds left here, but I have to ask you quickly, are you going to seek the nomination for the UCP for Lethbridge West for the next election?
I've got a lot of Cheryl Seaborn signs in my garage right now.
Have to recycle. There you go. Do your part for the environment. Cheryl Seaborn was the UCP Lethbridge West candidate in the last provincial election. She's an RN business owner and has called Lethbridge home for the past 25 years. Cheryl, thanks so much for joining us today from Lethbridge.
Thank you so much for having me, Hal. I really appreciate being here. It's actually my honor to be here. Thank you.